This is Aaron Levine, LG Insurance Agency, hanging out with my friend Andrew Harris Jr. from Liberty Insurance Associates. Yeah, I'm interviewing another insurance guy, and it's absolutely fucking awesome. I'm stoked to be sitting here with Andrew. Been trying to get him in the hot seat next to me for like what seems like a year now between his schedule and my schedule. It's just been a disaster. So I love the opportunity to be able to hang out with you today for a little bit, and then hopefully we can go grab a cocktail when we're done with this. I think would be great to go catch up even further. So thanks for coming in.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. So Andrew, you and I'm wearing a shirt that says New Jersey Young Insurance Professionals or New Jersey Yips on it, right? So you and I came up in the insurance industry at very similar times, very different paths to our very different successes, but we've come up through the ranks of PI, Professional Insurance Agents of New Jersey, kind of together. You are now the immediate past president for our state industry association, and I am the president-elect for our state insurance association. So we've been doing this together for a long time. We've seen the good, the bad, the backs of Jeeps after drinking way too much at Rooney's and then going somewhere else.
I kind of remember
that. We can call out Hal Soden. He was with us too that night, and Dave Ravel. We'll call him out. There were a lot of good times, both pre-kids and now that we both have large families. It's great. So again, I'm pumped to have you here. Give me a little bit of background. Talk about your career as an insurance professional, and then I want to talk about how you got brought into PIA and continued to grow up through the ranks.
Yeah, so my career as a professional, if you were to ask me when I was in college if I would have anything to do with the insurance industry, like many people, I would have said you're out of your mind. My father actually founded the agency that I am now the president of, but I thought it was boring and lame because when I'm younger, even the concept of liability just sounds boring.
It does. Still does.
And things like that. So I worked at Jacobson's, the nightclub. That was my first job, and I feel like I learned more there than I did in college.
You never had to throw me out, which is good. We didn't know each other then, but we definitely were in the same place at the same time.
Not to my knowledge. But eventually I'm like, oh boy, I need documented income and health insurance and all this other stuff. So I actually didn't start working directly for the insurance agency because I knew working with or for my father, not knowing what I was doing would be a terrible idea. So I worked for an insurance company. It was called the Proformance Insurance Company at the time. I started as a SIU investigator. I was a criminal justice major in college. So most of the people that I was working with were retired state troopers. I was the only one that wasn't carrying a gun with me going into the worst parts of New Jersey.
So SIU investigator, go talk more about that.
Special investigative unit for an insurance company. So anytime there's a suspicious car that magically went missing, even though they're eight payments behind on
fraud.
Yeah, fraud investigations. There are rings of chiropractors and doctors and attorneys that can get together and work together to potentially defraud that. We would investigate it. We wouldn't be the ones that would make the final call, but we would put all the information together. We had to do certain examinations under oath, talk to the attorneys, put all the information together, get it to the claims examiner, and then they would make a decision ultimately on whether or not they're going to deny claim or
just not cool enough for a TV show, but almost could have been.
Yeah. New Jersey SIU. That sounds like a.
I mean, some of the things that you saw and the places that you had to visit were exceptional, to be polite.
I only had to leave 2 of them. I called my boss. I was like, there's no way I'm going into that building right now because it just wasn't a good idea. There's parts of Atlantic City that are not on the off the beaten track that you don't want to be. And Patterson, Newark, a couple in Camden. One of them I had to leave because a state trooper wouldn't let me go into the facility I was going into. He said, if you go in there, then I'm going to have to go in there, and I don't want to go in there.
And I don't want to go in there. I love that. All right, and then you actually got out of the racket that you were in and moved into the agency.
Yeah, so the company I was working for was acquired at the time. They offered me a position, but I thought that would be a good leaping off point. But going from a insurance company that had limited amount of products that we did. I got to know a lot about it, but it was mostly personal lines. They had some commercial auto that they did, but making that leap into the independent agent channel where we have clients that do everything, and we need now I have to understand not just one company system. Now I have 50 carrier systems and different product lines and general liability and umbrella. It was a huge learning curve moving into that, and I thought it was going to be easy. Like I thought the learning just the one product and the one system and everything. I thought that was relatively easy, and then coming into the independent agent channel where you have to build the policy basically from scratch is very challenging. So it took a long time to really get my feet underneath me, but then building that skill and that muscle, so to speak, is been very gratifying and rewarding.
So that's one of the benefits, right? That you're a resource to me. If I have a question about a carrier, a policy, about something related to even insurance language, you're a text message away to me. Like, hey, what do you think about this, right? You've built yourself such a knowledge base of how the insurance policies actually work. Because when you go into insurance, you're like, all right, I can put the sales number and an address into a system and hit enter. I'm going to get a quote and everything's good. That's what the customer thinks. Customer thinks, just give me a quote, right? Like, okay, yeah, I can give you a quote. I need your subcontractor costs. I need a copy of your subcontract agreement, your loss runs. I need to know what exactly you're doing. Make sure nobody's going on the roof because there's going to be a roofing exclusion. And by the way, if you dig a tunnel, you're also uninsured, right? And all those gaps that come with it that create absolute mayhem, right? Being able to learn that and being a resource that you are has helped you build your book of business and earn such a respect and trust from agents and your customers alike. Like, talk about learning and understanding the policy language and how it's been doing that.
So even going back to working at the insurance company, the SIU division is a component of the claims division. So I did work after SIU. I did have a management training program I went to, and they put me through. They started in small property damage claims, moved into the litigation units, and then the larger casualty related claims. And that's a really great place to learn the product because we're selling the product itself, but the claims handling and processing is the product working. So there's a concept that we're selling on the policy side, but then when you actually have the claim, that's when it's actually going to put to work. I mean, no one wants to have a claim. No one wants to actually have that work.
Every time we get a call in that there's a new claim, I'm like, shit. I'm like, I cross my fingers, and I'm like, are we covered for that?
Yeah, I think every agent does the same thing where you have a claim, you're like, oh boy, I hope I did that right. And you quick open the policy, you read through, like, oh,
okay, everything's okay.
We did that. We're in good shape. So, yeah.
But understanding the inner workings of a claim, I've had this conversation so many times, is right, as an independent agent, we're essentially work on behalf of different insurance companies to satisfy the need of different types of insurance consumers, marry them together, and we're the ones in the middle dealing with everything, right? Glorified brokers, essentially, with a lot of fiduciary responsibility. Not that I want you to go into how you feel about that, but
well, if you think about it, we have a very difficult job because not only we have to go out and develop new relationships, and then we have to convince a potential customer that we're better suited to handle their account. We have to get all this information, and if we're lucky to get to that phase, then we have step 2, which is to find an underwriter in one of the carriers that we represent and convince them that this is an account that they want to write for the same or better coverage that they currently have and at a better price because, as we know, price never comes in third place. It's always a consideration. I might be able to improve some certain coverages that might be important to them, and they're willing to pay a little bit more for that.
Right.
But eventually, we have to make 2 sales if you think about it. I have to sell the customer that we're good at what we do, and then I have to convince an underwriter that might be sitting in a cubicle in Boston or Scottsdale, Arizona, that this is a good risk and that they should put their best foot forward on it.
Right.
So
then you have to resell that price, that policy, right? The package to the consumer, right? We have a price, we have a cost of it, we have limits, right? How many millions are we putting on the table here? And then we have the breadth and depth of the actual coverage within the insurance policy. If you want all 3, it's going to be very expensive. If you want a cheap price, you're going to lose the other two,
Yeah.
right? It's really marrying and matching and making sure that the consumer understands everything that they need to know and what their risks are, because you're also covering your own ass and your own E&O insurance to make sure that you advise the client appropriately, because we're responsible at the end of the day for what the consumer buys.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes you and I don't know if it's unique, but maybe better suited for the modern environment, because back in the day, there were only a handful of policies available, and they've been developing with the advent of technology and different inventions, so to speak, the rise of technology and everything. So there's all these different policies now that are now something that we need to talk about. But or like you said, we grew up in the industry around the same time. So all these new products that came out to cover the emerging risks that are coming up for individuals and businesses, we got to see them from the ground up. And normally they start really expensive because they don't know what kind of claims they're going to have. And then they eventually, once the claims actually start coming in, they start becoming more and more affordable. And you and I have a unique ability to, I think, speak to those, because we saw them from the very beginning and what they've evolved into, which are typically better products and coverage.
So speaking of technology, are you implementing anything quote unquote AI related into the agency right now?
So we're in the process of talking to 2 different AI companies. AI is the hot button word, obviously,
big
of the
phrase
day right now. But effectively what we do is it's contract law. So it's large language models, and that's really what AI is, the main selling point of it is. So it can process and analyze large amounts of data, and some of the capabilities that this has is pretty remarkable. So it's going to do the broad strokes. I'm never going to, well, I don't know about never, but for now, I'm not going to allow that to be the only thing that we do and just put 2 policies together, compare them, and let some robot tell me that this is the appropriate coverage for them. But it'll do a lot of the broad strokes and identify potential issues that we want to look into in the policy, where, prior to that, we're reading through the policies like, all right, where are the definitions, where are the insuring agreements, where are the conditions, where are the exclusions, what we have to be looking at. And
it's funny. I went through today. I had a quote for a project that I'm working on, and it's a construction related project. So there's a lot of moving parts to it and a lot of exclusions. So I'm flipping through it. I'm like, okay, I see. Now it's like, I got to summarize this for the customer. Using a tool will help me then create that summary that I can then review, because I also, have an idea of what I'm looking for. So I don't think AI for complex situations is ever going to replace our skill, knowledge, and experience. But to be able to pull and summarize data points that are in there and certain headlines of exclusions to summarize those exclusions, I think can speed up our response time back to a prospect or an insured on a lot of these things.
I definitely agree. It can certainly help with some of the efficiencies, but I will, this is another shout out for John Marchioni, who's the CEO of Selective Insurance. He actually brought up an interesting point that I'd really never thought of, in that the AI technology at some point it could potentially inhibit the growth of some of our newer employees. Because if you think about it, newer employees are going to probably start with some of the more processing, transactional type of things. But that's where they get to learn the foundations of the product. And if we're going to use AI and a computer to do that work and not potentially bring them in and learn from the ground up, we're going to sort of start training somebody like halfway through what a normal training process is going to be. So it's actually an interesting point that he brought up, where how are we going to develop talent in this industry? And that's already an issue.
How are we going to develop talent in any industry? Because there's even a lot of news reports on the national news networks and all over the internet about students, high school, college age students, that aren't learning shit right now because they're using tools, and then they're using another tool to defraud, to make sure that the professor doesn't pick up that they're using a tool to actually do all the work for them, right? So in the workplace, it's going to create efficiencies, but it's going to make everybody dumber. You and I are lucky enough to have the knowledge base and the will and the ability to use the tool to make it better for us. But that next generation coming in that didn't learn how to do research in college because they typed it into a chat model is going to be very interesting.
It could literally be a societal change if you think about it, right? So I use the analogy around that, having kind of started to think about this a little bit more, is like the ways and the directional apps that I have on my phone. I don't know if I could get home from here if I don't have that, because my sense of direction is completely gone because I've just rely on this
Waze.
app
I don't know
to
your
tell
phone
me.
number either, by the way.
Yeah,
You know.
I don't barely know my own phone number. So
Right? We don't know any of it. Like technology has taken so much of that away, and it's good, bad, or ugly. But anyway, we're not here to talk about that. So talk about, as far as the agency is concerned, what do you guys focus on? I want to give a little promo and a shout out for the agency.
sure. So construction and contracting in the commercial property and casualty market is probably our biggest vertical, if you will. We do have some manufacturing products and specialties. We do have a marina program, if you will, boat dealers, things like that, marine construction, and then sort of everything else. So we are a generalist, so to speak. There's certain things that I wouldn't touch because if I don't feel like we have the expertise to do something, if you called me with a municipal airport or something like that, I wouldn't know I wouldn't know who the markets are. I wouldn't know
Right.
what to look for. I wouldn't know what to ask. I could probably figure it out if I really, really, really put my mind to it. But
Right.
you're better suited going to somebody that focuses on that. So, and that's I think the sign of a good agent is if they tell you like, listen, this is not my area, and but being resourceful, which I am, I could probably figure out with a couple phone calls, and that's why PIA is so great. Is I can
Right.
make a couple calls and know who does that.
Sure.
And then here, I have a referral for you. I want you to take care of them. I could still handle the rest of what I'm comfortable with, but give it to somebody that really knows what they're doing.
I was with on the beach the other day. A friend of mine had a guest in from out of town. They were in from London, and this gentleman was also in the insurance business, but he works for a Lloyd's syndicate, and his minimum property value that they start looking at is 20 million. And by the way, it's only cruise ships and ocean vessels.
Yeah.
Would you even know where to go with a $200 million yacht?
I know a couple people that dabble in that area that work at different companies that run certain divisions, and I could certainly make those phone calls. But if it were me trying to build something of that nature, I say this all the time. I had a producer one time that brought in, and I don't know how he got into it, but Weeks Marine. I looked it up on Google, and a Wikipedia page came up. I opened it, and it was a picture of them hoisting the USS Challenger, which is a space shuttle, and putting it onto an aircraft carrier. And I was like, this is outside my league, buddy. I'm sorry, but it's amazing you got in here.
Right.
Maybe we can work on their group because, employee benefits, we do that also.
Sure.
That's less involved with what they're actually doing, and it's more just the number of lives and the plan design. But other than that, I'm not going to try to mess with the maritime law out in the ocean and military,
Right. You have a Florida corporation, but
Yeah,
yet the
good lord.
vessel says that it's from the Bahamas, and
there's
all the-
international waters and exposure. Like I know what the exposures are, but I
Right.
wouldn't know who to go to with it. So I'm
Well, the
not gonna-
biggest exposure right now on the open seas is there's two. It's piracy and cyber. Right. The pirates are trying to use cyber attacks to shut the vessels down, right, and then holding the vessel ransom to turn it back on again. Right? The pirates don't even have to enter the ship anymore because now they're using technology to break in and disable the engines of the ships. Right? So it's just wild to think that a ship's biggest risk is a cyber risk, not necessarily, of true malfunction. And I say the same thing about small and mid-sized businesses, even contractors. Cyber is our biggest risk. Employment practices, right? People are our second biggest risk. I'm less concerned about a building burning down than I am about the business owner being sued or a breach happening or some kind of invoice manipulation and somebody sending out a fraudulent check.
I literally told an attorney probably a year ago that if you're not going to buy cyber insurance because of the cost, I would recommend that you cancel your fire insurance because that's way more likely to happen and could be a way bigger claim than having a
Yeah.
fire in your building. You probably can't because there's mortgages and
There's things.
contractual things, but at the same time, from a risk perspective, I
Right.
thought it was that important to articulate that.
I'm
because-
seeing in a lot of lease agreements too, and not that this is an insurance conversation, but I'm seeing cyber and employment practices liability being required in lease agreements because what's a landlord wants to make sure you're financially able to pay the rent.
Right.
If you get hit with something that causes you to go out of business and you're not insured for it, you can no longer pay the rent. So the landlords don't care if you get sued or you do something stupid. They just want to make sure that they can get paid. And you having proper insurance, affords them to collect the rent?
A lot of what we sell, fortunately, unfortunately, is vendor management. So the bigger the company, the more sophisticated they're going to be, the more risk management departments they're going to have, and the more aggressive they're going to be with what they want their people that they work with to have. And then that's going to roll downhill to even small businesses, and that's what we're starting to see now too. Which is it's like I don't even have to tell you to buy it; you have to, or you'll be in breach of contract. So
Right. It's that subcontract agreement should have cyber and professional liability in it now too. Then it used to just have GL and hopefully workers' comp. Now you need to have cyber and errors and omissions for contractors and everything else. But anyway, what we're talking about is how big our industry truly is and how you can go from SIU at an insurance company and claims at an insurance company to being an independent agent, or you can go work in London on large commercial ocean vessels, or you can stay in Main Street and just focus on car insurance if you want to, or what we focus on. We love to focus on high net worth, personal properties plus our hospitality subset, right? So there's so many different aspects of what we do. And, as you and I came up in through PIA and through the ranks starting with the Yips more than 10 years ago. And now you just finished your presidency. So talk about your journey through PIA and how that's helped you.
So my journey through PIA, there are a few reasons I got involved. One, I wanted to give back to the industry and to that organization specifically. It was very good to my family. My father was the president of PIA of New Jersey. I believe I was 16 because I remember him going up to his speech when I had, I think I had pierced ear and bleached white hair. I was a little punk. And this is back when I thought insurance was boring and that I would never have anything to do with it. But having that nostalgic component to it, and there's a legacy component to it because walking in my father's footsteps, I think was important to me because I have a lot of respect for what he did in building. So our agency started at effectively nothing in 1983 and is built to what we are now, which we have a beautiful building and about 30 employees and a lot of respect in the industry among other agents and among our carriers and
Absolutely.
and things like that. So PIA, I learned very early on too. When we met that fateful night when we're hanging on the back of a Jeep driving to our 5th or 6th bar, it was really cool to have the friendship among competitors, which is a very bizarre almost thing, I think, where we will frequently call other competitors who we're friendly with. Like technically we compete. It's not often, but every once in a while we'll have an account and we'll run into each other, and we'll still compete on it, and we're not going to do anything shady but our job is to just say, I think this is where you should go.
I don't love, but there's been times, and I'll get a policy of yours on my desk, and there'll be a text, Andrew, this customer of yours is shopping. What do you want to do? And you'll be like, I hate them. Take it, or thanks for the heads up. I'll start doing damage control on my side. It's great to have that back relationship because I'm not, at the end of the day, one policy isn't making or breaking either of us for what we do to try to be shady to steal it. And we're better off being able to work together in certain situations, as opposed to, trying to work against each other. And there's so many opportunities for all of us in the room, both at the YIP level and at the PIA level, that we're sharing our knowledge, right? We're in the room at a board meeting and we're sharing knowledge about what we've experienced, new things that are going on, new technologies. People always come to me about tech-related matters because I love shiny new objects. I'm always exploring new technologies for the agency, how to become a little bit more efficient and a little bit better, and I love being able to be that resource for so many people. But I posted a story today on LinkedIn about that because we had the YIP summer reception recently, which is where we met probably 15 years ago. And I sponsor it. I sponsor it every year. As an agent, I'm sponsoring an insurance agent event. There's no value except to support the industry that supports me in that. I'm not a vendor looking for new contacts. I'm not a carrier trying to support our agents. I'm an agent supporting agents, and that's why I love to sponsor that. And I think I had 7 or 8 of my team members there for an afternoon out of the office also. I think it's great to interact in that setting, and get over. Initially, it's that competitive, like, wait, what are we doing here? But it's really, there's so much more to it.
Yeah. And I get that from other agents every once in a while, and even from some of my staff. It's like, well, you're not going to go there to sell anyone anything because they're all agents. They're not going to
Right.
buy anything from you. But that's not really why I believe we do it, which is, and it's come up multiple times because we have our committee meetings and we work through a lot of things, and there's a lot of things on the agenda we have to get to. But the having a drink and dinner afterwards, and the networking, and this is what I'm dealing with right now, and someone will probably have been through either that scenario or something similar to it. And a lot of times you get the information is more, well, this is what I did. Don't do it that way because here's what happened. So I can tell you what not to do. And then sometimes people are like, this is exactly how I handled it.
Right.
And this worked perfectly. So they give you some, this is just a generic conversation, but any number of topics come up.
Right.
And I remember Connie Mahoney, who was the president prior to me, said that she had some question. I don't even remember it, but she had some question about USLNH, the longshoremen's workers' comp
Okay.
addendum, and I told her this is how you would handle that, and she remembered that, and she brings it up all the time now. So it's a great thing because she otherwise wouldn't have
Right.
really known where to go with that, and I just made a couple recommendations, and I've been on the receiving side of that myself. So it's good to share that information because at the end of the day, all of us care, and PIA is it's for agents, but ultimately we're working for the benefit of our customers because we want there to be some confidence that our
Right.
our model and our distribution model that the carriers rely on is gonna be the way that people want to
Right.
do business with.
Which is
Insurance
which is
companies.
also helpful because we're on the front line of many company changes. We're on the front line of legislative changes with respect to PIA and our lobbyists, and Brad and everybody up in the Glenmont office. We get to hear a lot of this information before any other agent would hear it. And they probably won't, most agents, if they're not participating in an association, whether it's PIA or Big I, might not ever hear about legislative changes, step down related issues, or increased commercial auto liability limits. They won't hear it until a carrier tells them, and they're 6 months behind the 8 ball on it, right? So we get to get a lot of that frontline information, which helps us then distribute that to our clients because we then have a knowledge base that's significantly higher. So during your year as president, right? We're talking about the come up and the things that you learned throughout the way. Talk to me about how it was as president of PIA New Jersey for a year.
So, in short, it was awesome. So prior to being the president, there's the responsibilities that I would have, and I'm sure you can relate, are specific to an individual committee or an individual responsibility or an individual subcommittee or something like that. But when you're at the helm of the entire thing, there's coordination going on between our business operation, agency operations, our communications, our legislative and regulatory committees, our the conference, our education, our membership, everything that's going on with all of them. But the coordination of the entire thing that the staff kind of puts together behind the scenes and seeing how all the pieces kind of come together and to make the final product of
Right.
the entire organization is really cool to see how it works because before that, you kind of are focusing on one individual thing at a time. So, and every past president I've talked to all say the same thing is like, right when you figure it out and you feel like you have some momentum, your term's up and you're like, oh man, I wish I had a little bit more time. At the same time, it does take up a lot of time because
Right.
there's going to other states and trying to see what they're doing. There's just so many things on my plate at the time where I still have to run our business, and I have
Right.
3 young kids at home, and I have all these other responsibilities that I've piled onto myself, and it's just a lot of time. So there's a little bit of a relief, but also like I really feel like I can be more impactful if I had a little bit more time to do this. So maybe in the future we'll think about something like that, or maybe have a
But at the same time, in the come up through the executive committee ranks, it's a multi-year commitment. And once you get into that closed door room of the executive committee, you really start to see how things open up and see how the sauce is made, so to speak. And as president-elect, I'm trying to jump in and do a little bit more. And I always have with respect to my committees, and really tried to put my time, effort, and energy in where appropriate, plus also run my agency. But I really enjoy being in that executive committee and being able to see where decisions are being made and how we can make an impact and how we can do more, and ultimately how can we grow the engagement of our membership, both on a legislative level because we have so many legislative issues that we're talking about, and then on a social level too. The social piece of it is important. The technology piece, the carrier partnership piece. We've got a new carrier partnership that's going amazing so far in New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, New Hampshire, and really meeting with carriers on a regional level to explore issues and what's going on. And so there's a lot of fun in that room working with other state representative, other agents from different states. We all have similar issues, but they're a little bit different. Especially if you go up to New Hampshire and Vermont, those guys have different issues than we do. And if you go out west, when they start talking about agriculture, right, my eyes roll in the back of my head. I'm like, I have no room for
we have
more.
plenty of agriculture in New Jersey too.
We just don't talk about it as much as
Aquaculture. That was something I learned.
Aquaculture.
Remember
All
that?
right.
That's the clammers and oysters and crabbing and all that stuff. You
All
wouldn't
that stuff.
think about that. So.
Yeah, I don't think about that. I don't think about marijuana laws. Like, I stay in my box. I don't want to deal with anything else. So, what piece of advice would you give me as president-elect for PIA New Jersey on how to go about my upcoming year as president?
So I think you'll be phenomenal because you have the right mindset, open-minded, and you can learn from anybody. You can learn from someone that's just starting and that's trying to figure out, maybe they have one employee, all the way up to, we have organizations that are substantially larger than my own.
Sure.
And then trying to figure out how they scale and how they do things. But ultimately, it's just being curious, and I think you have that general skill, which is ask, like, how does this work, and not be ashamed to ask the dumb question.
Because we're all thinking the same dumb question.
Yeah, exactly. So just be curious and ask how certain things work, how this is going to work. But then one of the things that I think I did successfully was to put the right people in the right places. So I know you and Lisa Ham did a phenomenal job with a relatively new committee and concept that we had with the agency operations.
Right.
And I think I put that in an email to the entire board the one time, which is basically, if you put the right people in the right places, then there's definitely going to be some sort of, all right, what is the idea? What's the mission? What are the plans? How are you going to get there? And then setting that stuff up. So the beginning is very important because there's a lot of, hypothesizing and how is this going to work. And then once the execution goes, just get out of the way and not
Right.
micromanage. Everybody on that board are there for a reason, and they know what they're doing, and they're gonna do a fantastic job.
Right.
And I can just throw my opinion in every once in a while and check in. Because ultimately, as the president, you're responsible for everything. You don't
Right.
have to do everything. So there's some people that really like that role. My father was one of them. He's like, I like to control and own projects because I don't have to do any of the work. I'm
Right.
just responsible for it. I have someone else to do it and delegate. Right? So
Putting the right people in the room and bringing the right energy, I think, is super important, right? I love the be curious, the stay curious thing. I talk about that a lot because that's important for everybody, right? And I think anybody listening, anybody that's curious about PIA or any insurance agent or even, a carrier representative that might want to get more involved, might want to understand how things are working behind the scenes, what we're working on a legislative level, what we're working on for conference or for education on how to make things better for agents as a whole, and then ultimately for consumers, right? The consumer set all the way down to people buying us with a single automobile and a single automobile insurance policy, to mega corporations, spending millions of dollars a year on insurance policies or having $1 million deductibles. There's so many different facets of what we do, and I think we're always looking for people to join and bring their curiosity, like you said, bring their energy and bring their ideas of how to make things better, to participate on our committees. So, there's open seats in all of our committees, which I think could be great for anybody that would be interested to learn more. They can definitely reach out to me or even to Andrew or anybody else on our committees or the board or to PIA directly. I think could be really beneficial to everything that we're doing.
Yes. So there are a few people that I brought into those committees that have agreed because I don't want to say I was tired of it. I'm always happy to answer the phone and give you my answer. But the question. So you brought up the 1.5 million for the 26,000 GVW trucks and above. I got a bunch of phone calls when that was looking like it was going to start happening, and I would always tell them everything I knew, but also like, hey, why don't you come and get involved in one of our committees so you could help me fight these
Right.
assholes that are trying to shove all this stuff down our face with no guidance and be part of the process. And then that's you made mention of it before, how great it is as an organization. I see these things coming a mile away now because our lobbyists will say like, hey, just so you know, this bill just got introduced by this representative, and we think it has some legs because they have, they're the Senate president or the
Right.
Assembly Speaker or whatever it is. So it's probably going to get a lot of looks, and this is how it could. We don't necessarily know how it'll impact your industry. Some of it, you're like, all right, well, it's not going to be a big deal. But some of it's like, wow, that's going to be it's going to be a doozy, and we're going to have to explain this
Yeah.
to our clients, and this is going to be a regulation or a statute or even a law
Right.
that goes into place, and we're going to have to be able to explain it. So how are we going to do that? And we're strategizing as a combined organization with multiple agents trying to figure out how we're going to get this done,
Right.
and how are we going to educate our customers, how are we going to educate other agents, how are we going to put it all together.
And how are we
It's
going to
really
work with our carrier partners on it as well, right?
Yeah.
Those conversations are good. And so I remember I interviewed John Latimer, and I had a podcast conversation. We did a digital video. John from the Barclay Group, large agency owner. He loves his e-bikes. We were having conversations about e-bikes and talking about legislation for e-bikes. So the other day I get a call, unfortunately, about a kid on a bike who caused a motor vehicle accident, got a ticket for an unregistered vehicle, uninsured vehicle, and ultimately caused an accident. I knew so much about this topic that unfortunately I had to say, the parents better just step up and pay the bill to get the car fixed and be done with it and hope nothing else follows, because there's no coverage on your auto, there's no coverage on your homeowners. You have nothing anywhere unless you buy a specific policy for this. We're seeing more and more of those, and the e-bikes scare the crap out of me. Not that I want to go into it. I see kids all the time without helmets, 2 kids on a bike, right? Accidents are happening, and they're causing accidents in the street, and the parents don't realize they have no insurance anywhere to protect themselves or the kids for what they're doing.
It's so funny you mentioned that because literally yesterday I was driving back from Red Bank on Phalanx Road. I think it's a 45-mile-an-hour road. There, I was behind 2 e-bikes on. This is a busy road going right past Brookdale. They were going over 50 miles an hour
Right.
on a bike with no tail lights, no blinkers, no nothing. And I couldn't even keep up with them. They were
That's
going
crazy.
50 something miles an hour, and they had to be 13, 14 years old. They've never been through any sort of traffic or defensive driving or anything
Right.
like that, and it's insane.
When we were coming up as teenagers, kids had mopeds.
I had a moped.
Right, they go 23 miles per hour, if that. But you had to have it you had to be licensed and registered and insured to ride a moped. Maybe not insured, but at least today, and be wearing a helmet. Like, none of this exists with these e-bikes today, and so hopefully legislation does go through. But we have so many we're limited on options to put insurance in place that it makes it difficult for us to recommend and remind people that there's no coverage out there, because no one's telling us they're buying an e-bike.
Right. So that's that. You talked about that before. Well, like the amount of questions that we have to ask in just a normal personal home and auto situation.
Right.
If someone calls you, I could argue that I could spend a half a day with somebody to go through all the potential exposures that they
Here's a
have.
checklist that's
Do your
75
kids
bullet
use-
points long.
Your kids use social media, and they potentially could be cyberbullying somebody. Do you have a dog? What kind of dog? Do you have a diving board? Do you have a trampoline? Do you have an e-bike? Where do you store the e-bike? Because
Right.
they're going to have a problem with if you're
With
in an
the
apartment
battery.
and you're going to stick it in there. There's all the lithium ion issues that come with those. Um, do you plan on doing any additions? Is it your primary residence? Do you stay there more? Is it ever going to be considered vacant by the
You'd
policy
never sell
terms? And
another
it's
policy if you had to
literally-
ask all those questions.
It's so challenging now that it's getting to the point where you have to ask. Not only you have to ask those questions, that sometimes, unfortunately, in New Jersey, it could happen after I sold the policy. Something changed, and now
Right.
I might have a potential exposure, because if the claim's not covered, an attorney's probably going to tell them like, well, sue the carrier, sue your agent, sue everybody, and then we'll probably settle it, because no one wants to go through the litigation costs, and it's it's just frustrating because if you don't have sign-offs and check-offs on everything, and it's just getting very onerous for the
Makes
independent
it
agencies.
very difficult for what we do. But at the end of the day, that's why we do it together, and we can bounce questions off of each other, and we have the association to fall back on. And I love watching everything that you're doing with the insurance agency. I love following, a step and a half behind you with respect to things at PIA New Jersey. Roger's doing a great job right now, and I can't wait for my year as president. But then it's also like, what next after that, right? So what's next on the docket for you? Just focusing and staying at work?
Yeah. So there's been a lot in the last few years. I'm not going to go into to everything, but I've had a lot of different moving pieces in the agency, and there's been some loss of two of my partners. As I'm sure you know, my father passed away, and then my other business partner passed away the year before that. So with that came a lot of, we're a heavily regulated industry, so we have to change all of the principal information. We have to run valuations. We have to deal with, the estate issues and all that stuff, and valuations all over the place. And between that and everything else, and then also, 6 months after my father passed, going in as the state association president was certainly a challenge. There's a lot of things that I think I need to focus on inside the agency. I did a lot of that while I was there. A lot of the infrastructure changes. We did a major renovation in our office, building a lot of our systems, running some new Cat 6 lines so that we can use more cloud-based things that'll be faster. Things like that. So I've built a lot of that. We have 3 new producers. They're all seem to be doing really well right now. And then just building the launch pad, and then now it's time to hit the launch sequence and try to grow.
Love
And I feel like we're a little bit of a well-kept secret. We're really good at what we do. We have very high retention, which retention just means that our clients tend to stick with us once they're with us. I just want to get a little bit better with the advertising. But with the name Liberty Insurance Associates, a lot of times people confuse that with Liberty Mutual, which we are not. We do represent them, but we're not Liberty Mutual. So advertising tends to be a little bit of a challenge because I might as well be throwing a Liberty Mutual ad out there.
Well, that's something that I can help you out with.
That's something I can certainly learn from you with.
I'm pretty good at that game. Well, Andrew Harris, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today. I can't wait to get this episode out and see where you take your agency and see where you go within PIA as well. I'll see you soon.
Awesome.